Worthless. Pathetic. Nothing more than a disgrace. How did I ever end up marrying you? His words lashed across the dining hall like a whip. Then, with a cruelty that knew no shame, he spat toward her plate. The saliva splattered on porcelain, staining not just the food but the evening itself. Laughter followed, not kind, not joyful, but sharp and humiliating. His laugh carried weight, the kind that crushed. She froze, shoulders tightening, though not a single cry left her lips. The room fell into suffocating silence. Guests, family, partners, old friends, stared in shock, some with pity, some with discomfort, most too afraid to intervene. What none of them realized was that the woman humiliated before them was far from fragile. Beneath her quiet presence rested a strength none of them could see. A strength waiting, watching, biding its time. And that night, with his arrogance on full display, the first cracks began to show, not in her, but in him. This isn't merely a tale of insult at a family gathering. This is a story of betrayal, of hidden power, and of the rise of a woman underestimated by all. Hello, dear family, welcome back. Before we dive further, I have one small request: please subscribe to our channel. Each click helps us keep these voices alive, voices of pain, of courage, of triumph. And when you leave a comment, let us know where in the world you're watching from. Together, we aren't just sharing stories, we're keeping hope alive. The Dawson mansion glittered that evening. Golden light spilled from tall arched windows onto polished marble floors. Chandeliers shone like frozen fireworks above, scattering 1,000 sparks across the vast dining hall. A mahogany table stretched the length of the room, its surface dressed with fine china, polished silver, and crystal glasses that glimmered under the glow. It was Richard Dawson's idea, of course it was. He thrived on spectacle, on proving his wealth, his bloodline, his dominance. The guest list was long: relatives, business allies, acquaintances old and new. Laughter and chatter swirled, glasses clinked, every word carefully chosen to flatter the Dawson name. At the far end of the table sat Emma Dawson. Her gown, a muted shade of blue, looked modest among the sparkling fabrics around her. Her dark hair was tied neatly, her posture composed, her presence quiet. She spoke little, smiled softly when addressed, and kept herself in the background. To most, she seemed almost invisible. To Richard, her silence was worse than invisibility, it was an irritation. At the head of the table, Richard stood with a raised glass. To family, he roared, voice booming through the hall. To triumph, to honor, to legacy. Glasses lifted, voices echoed back. Laughter followed, eager, rehearsed. Emma lifted hers too, calm and steady. She had never needed to be the loudest in the room. But Richard noticed. He always noticed. Emma, his voice sliced through the noise like a blade. Are you really going to sit there in silence again? Heads turned. Some laughed nervously. Others looked down at their plates. Emma set her glass down gently, her voice quiet yet clear. I thought your words were enough, Richard, she said with a small smile, one meant to keep peace, not provoke. Richard's laugh was harsh. Always quiet. Always useless. What good is a wife who has nothing to say? Tell me, Emma, why do you bother sitting at my table at all? The chatter died. Emma's fingers tightened around her glass, but her face remained calm, unbroken. From midway down the table, Margaret Dawson, Richard's mother, leaned forward. She wore black silk, her gray hair pinned into a severe bun, her eyes sharp with disdain. She's here only because you married her, Richard, Margaret said coldly. Though heaven knows why you ever did. We warned you she wasn't worthy of this family name. Emma's chest ached, but she stayed still. Margaret's words were an old wound, one she had grown used to carrying. Richard smirked, emboldened by his mother. He stretched lazily, letting his eyes rake over Emma with disdain. Exactly. Look at her. Lifeless. A dull statue collecting dust. No beauty, no spark, no presence. Tell me, Emma, what value do you actually bring to this family? Besides wasting oxygen at this table? Uncomfortable glances darted across the room. A few guests shifted uneasily, but none spoke up. Emma met his gaze steadily. I bring loyalty, Richard. And respect. Her words, simple yet heavy, fell into the silence like stones into still water. Richard's jaw tightened. Her calmness cut deeper than any outburst could. Loyalty, he spat. Respect? Don't fool yourself. No one here respects you. Gasps echoed. Emma's eyes flickered, a shadow of pain crossing her face before she masked it again. Beside her, Claire Adams reached under the table, squeezing Emma's hand. She leaned close, whispering, Don't let him win. You're stronger than this. Emma turned to her with quiet gratitude. Claire's brown eyes glowed with warmth, though when they drifted back to Richard, another flicker passed, subtle and hidden. Richard leaned forward, voice rising. You're nothing, Emma. A shadow. A mistake I regret every single day. How did I ever tie myself to you? He laughed, a jagged, cruel laugh. And then, he spat. The spit landed on the rim of her plate, droplets staining her gown. The room froze. Forks clattered. Gasps filled the air. Emma stiffened, staring at her dress, her hands trembling once before going still. She did not cry. She did not shout. She sat silently, bearing her shame in front of them all. Richard's laughter grew louder, echoing through the hall. Look at her. Worthless. Embarrassing. A pathetic joke. Margaret shook her head slowly, lips curling in disdain. This is what happens, Richard, when you marry beneath you. At the far end, Daniel Dawson, Richard's younger brother, smirked faintly. His sharp eyes glimmered with amusement. He enjoyed the scene, though his reason for enjoying it was his own. Claire hurried to grab a napkin, offering it with trembling hands. Here, she whispered urgently. Don't let him see you break. Emma accepted, blotting her dress gently. Claire's words were meant to comfort, but when her eyes lingered on Richard, there was something else hidden, admiration. Desire. It flickered only for a second, but it was there. The hall stayed silent, heavy. Emma sat steady, porcelain mask intact. Inside, humiliation burned, hot and sharp. At the head of the table, Richard leaned back, arms crossed, smug grin widening. There. Now she looks how she feels. Pathetic. A few forced laughs echoed. Others bowed their heads in guilt. Margaret struck again, her voice venom wrapped in sweetness. Emma, dear, perhaps you should excuse yourself. You clearly don't belong at this table tonight. Emma lifted her eyes, calm and unwavering. Thank you for your concern, she said softly. But I am perfectly fine. The gentleness carried an edge. Margaret faltered, her smirk cracking. Daniel chuckled, swirling his glass. Let her stay, mother. It's entertainment. We rarely get such a show. Richard slammed the table, laughing wildly. Exactly. Let her stay. Let them all see what failure looks like. Emma's grip tightened on the napkin, but she said nothing. Her silence looked like surrender to them. But it was not. Claire leaned in again, her whisper urgent. Emma, you don't have to endure this. We can leave. Let them drown in their cruelty. Emma turned slightly, her answer quiet but steady. If I walk out, Claire, they win. And I won't give them that satisfaction. Claire's chest tightened. She admired Emma's calm resolve, but something else stirred inside her. When her gaze shifted to Richard, his arrogance, his command of the room, she felt drawn to it, though she hated herself for the thought. The dinner dragged on painfully. Servants moved like shadows, refilling glasses, removing plates. Guests tried to return to chatter, but every word fell flat under the memory of Richard's cruelty. He, however, basked in it. He raised his glass again, voice booming. "To my dear wife," he sneered, "the most loyal woman alive, silent, invisible, irrelevant." A few nervous laughs escaped, though most remained silent. Emma lifted her glass slowly, her hand steady. Her eyes swept the table, resting briefly on each face, Richard, Margaret, Daniel, even Claire. Then her lips curved faintly. "To family," she said, calm and clear. The words were plain, yet the air shifted. For a breath, Richard's grin faltered. Margaret masked irritation with a cough. Daniel's eyes narrowed, curious. Claire felt a chill run through her spine. Emma's composure unsettled them all. Claire squeezed her hand under the table, whispering, "You're stronger than they realize." Emma gave no reply. She didn't need to. At last, the dinner ended. Guests rose quickly, relieved to escape the suffocating tension. Their whispers followed them out, some pitying, some judging. Margaret swept away, chin high. Daniel lingered, smirking as if studying a puzzle. Richard strode off loudly, arm linked with Vanessa, laughing like a victor. Emma stayed seated until the last of them had gone. Only Claire remained. "Emma," Claire murmured, kneeling beside her chair. "I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this." Emma folded the soiled napkin neatly, setting it on the table. Her gaze steady, she answered. "Don't waste pity on me, Claire. Save it for them." Claire blinked. "What do you mean?" Emma rose, smoothing her gown, each movement deliberate. She didn't look broken. She looked composed. One day, she whispered, almost to herself, "They'll choke on their laughter." Claire's breath caught. She didn't fully understand, but the words stuck with her. Emma walked away with her head high, dignity intact despite the stain on her gown. Claire followed, torn between loyalty to Emma and the dangerous pull she felt toward Richard. But within Emma, a fire had been lit. Later, the mansion quieted. Emma moved slowly through its wide halls, her gown faintly marked, her expression unreadable. She entered her study, a small, warm room filled with books, a wooden desk, and a single lamp glowing softly. She sat at the desk, hands flat against the surface. Her shoulders trembled once, then steadied. No tears came. Richard would never see her break, not even in solitude. But memories forced their way back. 2 years earlier. She had stood outside Richard's office, the door slightly ajar. Inside came laughter, his voice and a woman's giggle. Emma peeked in. Richard held Vanessa in his arms, lips pressed against hers. The sight shattered Emma silently. She shut the door without a sound, hand over her mouth to trap her cry. That night, she confronted him. "Who is she?" Her voice shook. Richard didn't even pretend. Unbuttoning his shirt, he said flatly. "Vanessa excites me. You don't." End of story. Her throat tightened. "I'm your wife. And you're my burden," he replied coldly. "Be grateful I let you stay." Emma had turned away, her heart breaking quietly. Another memory. A year later. She sat with Margaret in the lavish sitting room. Gathering her courage, she spoke. "Mother Dawson, Richard is unfaithful. I can't live like this." Margaret stirred her tea calmly, eyes sharp. "Vanessa is better for Richard," she said icily. "She has charm, ambition, things you'll never have." Emma's lips parted in shock. "You approve?" Margaret leaned back, her voice dripping disdain. "You were never worthy of this family. Richard can do as he pleases. If he finds joy elsewhere, that is no concern of mine." Emma lowered her gaze, crushed. She understood then, she had no allies in that house. The memories faded. Back in her study, Emma gazed at her reflection in the dark window. Her wounds were deep, but hidden. She carried them where no one could see. A knock startled her. "Come in," she called softly. The door opened. Claire stepped inside with 2 mugs of tea. Her smile was warm, her eyes gentle. "I thought you could use this," she said, placing one on the desk. Emma's lips curved faintly. "Thank you." Claire sat beside her. "How are you holding up?" Emma hesitated, then sighed. "It hurts. Being humiliated in front of everyone, it's not something you forget." Claire wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "You don't deserve it. He's cruel, blind. You deserve better." Emma rested briefly in the hug. "Sometimes I wonder if I did something wrong." Claire gripped her hands tightly. "You did nothing wrong. You're too good for him. If he can't see that, it's his loss." Emma's eyes glistened, though no tears fell. She nodded slowly. "Thank you, Claire. You're the only one who stands by me." Claire's smile softened. "Always." But as Emma looked away, Claire's expression changed. For a moment, her eyes darkened with calculation. Richard's face lingered in her mind, his voice, his authority, the way he commanded the room. Even in cruelty, he radiated power. And it stirred something in her she couldn't silence. She blinked it away, hiding it beneath a gentle smile. Outwardly, the loyal friend. Inwardly, a crack already forming. The mansion was wrapped in silence as the night deepened. Emma eventually retreated upstairs, leaving Claire alone in the study. For a moment, Claire sat motionless, her eyes on the lamp's glow, her mind caught between loyalty and temptation. Richard's voice echoed in her thoughts, sharp, mocking, yet powerful. She recalled the way he had dominated the room, every gaze orbiting around him even as he spewed cruelty. His arrogance disgusted her, yet it drew her in like gravity. Emma returned briefly, thanking Claire for the tea before excusing herself. Claire smiled warmly, then slipped away toward her guest room. But instead of resting, she wandered through the corridors, her steps carrying her to the garden. There, beneath the pale moonlight, stood Richard. A cigar burned between his fingers, smoke curling upward like shadows. "You came," he said with a smirk, voice smooth. "You asked me to," Claire whispered, her heart racing. He stepped closer, the glow of the cigar carving sharp lines across his face. "Emma never understood me. Too quiet. Too empty. But you," his eyes ran over her, "you see me." Claire's breath caught. She wanted to deny it, to step back, but she stayed. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured. "Why not?" His grin widened. "Emma's nothing without me. You know it. But you're different." Her pulse quickened. "She's my friend." "And she drags you down," Richard countered. "With me, you wouldn't hide in shadows." The words slipped under her skin like poison sweetened with honey. She told herself it was wrong, but her silence betrayed her. Richard flicked his cigar into the fountain. "Go before someone sees. But think about what I said." Claire nodded faintly, slipping back inside. Her steps were light, but her heart pounded. She convinced herself it was nothing, just words, just a moment. But deep inside, a dangerous ember smoldered. Meanwhile, Emma sat in her study, the only place in the house that truly belonged to her. She reached beneath her collar, pulling out a thin chain with a small key. Unlocking the bottom drawer, she revealed neat stacks of documents. Her fingers touched the papers, contracts, shareholder certificates, legal agreements. They told a story no one else knew. Years earlier, when Richard's empire had stood on the brink of collapse, it was her inheritance that had saved it. She had invested under another name, securing control while letting him bask in praise. The world thought Richard brilliant. Margaret called him a genius. Daniel envied his success. But every stone of that empire rested on Emma's silent sacrifice. She gazed at the documents, her expression calm, unreadable. At any moment, she could strip him of everything he flaunted. But not yet. Locking them away again, she lifted her eyes to the window. The woman staring back at her reflection wasn't weak. They had all misjudged her, Richard, Margaret, Daniel, even Claire. And soon, they would learn how wrong they were. Days later, the city sparkled as Dorson Enterprises hosted a grand gala in a luxury hotel. Crystal chandeliers reflected in towering glass walls, music floated, and champagne glittered in crystal flutes. Emma arrived in a simple emerald gown, elegant but modest compared to the dazzling outfits around her. She stayed near the back, her quiet dignity cloaking her like armor. Richard arrived like royalty, Vanessa clinging to his arm. Her golden hair shone beneath the lights, her gown bold and scarlet. He laughed loudly, shaking hands, flaunting her openly as if Emma were invisible. Guests whispered, eyes darting between Emma's modest figure and Vanessa's brilliance. The contrast was cruel, intentional. Richard made sure everyone saw. Later, in a glass-walled boardroom high above the city, the real spectacle began. Richard stood at the head of the table, Vanessa at his side, Margaret glowing with pride, Daniel smirking with mischief, and Claire sitting quietly, watching with hungry eyes. Richard paced, voice commanding, "We are expanding. Europe. Asia. This is just the beginning. We won't just compete, we'll dominate." One director frowned. "The finances aren't strong enough for such risk." "Failure?" Richard barked, cutting him off. "Failure doesn't exist under my leadership. You're either with me or irrelevant." Daniel smirked approvingly. "History rewards the bold. Play it safe, and you'll die forgotten." Richard's chest swelled. He thrived on such praise. He looked around, daring anyone to disagree. None did. At the far end, Emma sat quietly, hands folded, eyes steady. No one noticed her, but she noticed everything. The meeting ended. Richard brushed past her without a glance, Vanessa glowing at his side, Margaret beaming, Daniel whispering encouragement. Claire lingered behind, her gaze fixed on Richard with a longing she tried to disguise. Emma stayed a moment longer, calm mask intact, though inside the storm built stronger. That night, Richard remained in the hotel suite with Vanessa, their laughter echoing behind closed doors. Emma returned home alone, her reflection in the car window a blur of strength and sorrow. The next day, Claire found her in the study. She sat gently on the edge of Emma's chair, voice soft. "You shouldn't endure this." He flaunts her openly. Margaret encourages him. "They don't deserve you." Emma clasped her hands together. "It hurts, yes. But if I walk away, they'll celebrate. I won't hand them victory." Claire pulled her into a hug. "You have me. Always." Emma smiled faintly. "That's what keeps me standing." But later that night, Claire's steps carried her down the corridor to the lounge, where Richard drank whiskey, tie loosened. "You should be with your wife," she whispered. Richard smirked. "My wife? Don't make me laugh. Emma is dead weight. She doesn't fight, doesn't shine, doesn't live. She just exists." Claire's voice trembled. "She's hurting." "I don't care anymore," Richard replied coldly. "The papers are being prepared. I'm divorcing her. Vanessa will stand at my side. That's the future." Claire froze. "Divorce?" "Yes." His grin twisted. "And maybe there's room for you too. You're not like her. You understand me." Claire's chest pounded. She wanted to protest, but instead she nodded faintly, unable to resist. The following morning, the Dawson mansion was unnervingly quiet. Emma sat alone in her study, a stack of papers laid neatly on the desk. She had been reviewing them when the phone rang. Rising to answer it, she left the door slightly ajar. Claire happened to pass by. Her eyes caught the gap. Curiosity pulled her closer, and before she realized, she slipped inside. Her gaze fell upon the desk where one drawer sat ajar. Temptation gnawed at her until she slid it open. Inside were folders, organized with meticulous care. She lifted one, her hands trembling. The word stared back at her: certificates, legal seals, official signatures. Her breath hitched. "This can't be true," she whispered. She shoved the folder back quickly, telling herself it was nonsense, some fantasy Emma created to comfort herself. She laughed nervously and hurried out, blind to the fact she had just touched the key to Emma's silent power. That evening, Richard hosted another dinner, smaller, yet dripping with arrogance. Vanessa sparkled at his side, Margaret raised her glass high, and Daniel whispered schemes of bold expansion. Emma sat quietly, a shadow at her own table. Claire, however, hovered near Richard, whispering poison into his ear. She painted Emma as broken, pitiful, unworthy. Her words fed Richard's cruelty, deepening his disdain. The laughter and sneers weighed heavily against Emma like chains. But she did not break. Her silence grew sharper, a blade waiting to be unsheathed. The next morning, the boardroom glittered with polished glass and chrome. Beyond the tall windows, the city gleamed under the rising sun. Shareholders filled the room, voices hushed, anticipation thick in the air. Richard stood proudly at the head of the table, suit immaculate, arrogance radiating like a crown. Vanessa sat close, Margaret's eyes shone with pride, Daniel lounged with a sly grin, and Claire leaned forward eagerly, her gaze hungering for Richard's approval. At the far end sat Emma, plain in a black dress, calm and composed. Richard raised his arms. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, his voice booming, "a new age begins today. I am the man who will lead this empire to glory." Applause thundered. Margaret beamed. Daniel smirked. Vanessa clapped adoringly. "We will expand across continents," Richard continued, pacing like a general. "Europe, Asia, no market is beyond our grasp. History remembers the bold, and I am bold." More clapping followed, though unease flickered in some faces. Margaret lifted her chin with satisfaction, Daniel whispered encouragement, and Claire's lips curved in a smile. Richard soaked in the praise, his grin widening. Then his eyes found Emma, sitting silent. His smirk sharpened. "Tell me, Emma," he taunted. "Do you approve, or will you stay silent as always? Pretending your opinion matters." A ripple of laughter spread. Margaret sighed dramatically, Claire smirked wider. Emma rose slowly, her movements deliberate. She placed a folder on the table, her voice calm yet firm. "I will not pretend, Richard." He chuckled mockingly. Finally, the ghost speaks. Emma opened the folder, spreading documents across the polished surface. Her gaze swept the board. "You speak of empire, but you forget the foundation. This company survives because of me. I own 90% of Dorson Enterprises." The room erupted. Gasps. Shouts. Whispers. Richard barked a laugh. "Pathetic. Lies. Sit down before you embarrass yourself." Claire laughed too. "She's delusional. Don't waste our time." Emma's calm never wavered. "Truth needs no permission. Verify the papers." She pushed the documents toward a director. Hands trembled as the folder was passed along. One by one, faces drained of color. Finally, a senior member stood, voice shaking. "It's true. The signatures, the seals, everything is valid. Emma Dawson is the majority shareholder." Shock rippled through the room like an earthquake. Richard's smirk vanished. His face paled. Margaret slammed her hand down. Impossible. A trick. Daniel's grin collapsed, replaced by rage. Claire froze, horror dawning as her betrayal crumbled to dust. Emma's voice rang steady. Richard Dawson, you no longer hold authority here. As of this moment, I remove you from your position. The board gasped. The weight of her words silenced them. She turned to Daniel. Your reckless whispers end now. You hold no power here. Daniel clenched his jaw, fury blazing, but he remained silent. Emma's eyes shifted to Margaret. For years you scorned me, called me unworthy. Yet the empire you worship rests on my sacrifice. You have no voice here. Margaret's face burned red, her lips trembling, but no words came. Finally, Emma looked at Richard. His body shook, fists trembling, arrogance shattered. Emma, wait, he stammered. We can fix this. Please, I didn't know. If I had. You would have spat on me regardless, Emma cut in, her tone sharp as steel. You spat on me before them all. Today I return your gift, not with spit, not with rage, but with truth. And truth does not forgive. Richard staggered, collapsing into his chair. Claire's voice broke desperately. Emma, please. You know me. I stood with you. I never meant. Emma's eyes flicked toward her, cold and piercing. You betrayed me in silence. That is worse than cruelty spoken aloud. You traded loyalty for crumbs of attention. Now you are left with nothing. Claire's face crumbled, tears streaking down her cheeks. Around the table, silence reigned. Shareholders stared at Emma in awe. Calmly, she gathered her documents, sliding them back into the folder. This meeting is over. From today, Dawson Enterprises will walk with integrity, not arrogance. We will grow, but not recklessly. We will succeed, but not by poisoning our soul. Emma turned toward the door, her back straight, each step firm. Behind her, Richard sat broken, his empire torn from his grasp. Vanessa slipped away, unwilling to fall with him. Margaret seethed, powerless. Daniel's smirk was gone, replaced with silent fury. Claire trembled, hollowed by her own betrayal. Emma walked out reborn. Not merely avenged, but transformed. True strength speaks softly. Integrity outlasts cruelty. And betrayal consumes those who embrace it.